right, this is a geometry note card construction for Chapter 1 with LaRue or Bales or Monahan or Bloom. We're going to make a note card. I suggest you grab a highlighter maybe. It's kind of nice to be able to quickly find stuff when things are timed. So in the first top, what I want you to write, there's 2 vocabulary words with this picture I want you to know. Coplanar. And then you should highlight that so that it stands out to you when you're looking at your note card. Coplanar points are ones that are on the same plane. So you might want to underline that word. A plane is kind of like the floor or the ceiling or a sheet of paper. When you're asked for points that are coplanar, let's go put 1, 2, 3 points right there. So I put, did you see me do that, guys? I did like 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put 1 up here and 1 down here. So I've got this one, this one, this one in red, and I'm going to do this one in red as well. It'll go. And then I have the 2 in black. Okay? The 4 red ones are considered coplanar. You're supposed to see them all sitting on that floor. So right on the same plane. And if you have colors like I see you do, Lily, you might want to do the coplanar ones maybe in pink or whatever. Or I'm not going to do it, but you guys out there might want to label these A, B, C, D and put A, B, C, D under coplanar. I'm not doing everything for you. Then we also have another vocabulary word called collinear. Collinear points are all on the same line. So these 3, I'm going to change this one to black, are called collinear points. So we're going to write on same line. Coplanar are all on the same plane. You're supposed to see what this line is stabbing through that plane. Does that make sense? So maybe you label the red ones A, B, C, D. Maybe you label these E and F. So your collinear ones would be E and this middle and F. I'm not going to do everything for you, but you need to know coplanar and collinear. Does that make sense? All right. Next up, that deals with planes and lines. I have this cube pictured right here. We're going to go label all of the vertices. So we're going to call this guy A, B, C, D, and on the bottom maybe W, X, Y, and this back one Z. All right, so you've got on that cube 8 different points. 4 up on the ceiling, 4 on the floor, and then 4 on each wall, right? If it asks you for the other point on plane A, B, Z, I want you to shade this back guy in here lightly with your pencil. That right there is plane A, B, Z. So we're going to put another point on plane A, B, Z. Shade it in so you know you're on that left-hand wall. If this were your test, what would you say another point on plane A, B, Z is? W. Okay? Now you also might be asked for the intersection. Okay? So you're going to write over here that planes intersect. Maybe you want to highlight that, so if it asks you on your test, where do these 2 planes intersect, it just stands out to you. But planes intersect at a line. So maybe it's multiple choice and it asks you where 2 planes intersect. For us, let's talk about that one that I highlighted on the wall. We're going to highlight another one on the top. So I want you to lightly shade in this top one as well. I think I'm going to choose a different color to do that. So I'm going to lightly shade in this top one as well. So I have that side wall in yellow and the ceiling in green. So if I were to ask you where does plane A, B, C, the ceiling, hey, what's another point, Bentley, on plane A, B, C? D. okay? But it might ask where plane ABC and AB, let's do AW, let's even do BWZ, because you can name it with any 3 letters on it. So if we're asked for where plane ABC, the ceiling, and BWC, the side wall, intersect, what line would you pick? Where does the green ceiling intersect the yellow wall?
AB.
Line AB. Yep, so let's go AB with a line. All right, so you have to know that to name a plane, you do it with any 3 points on it, okay? If you have 3 points on it, like if I said another point on plane DCY, you'd say X. It locks you into a wall. Does that make sense? Are we good with the planes? All right, then you need to know the difference between segments, rays, lines, and lengths. There's different notation for each. You guys were good at this on a formative quiz, but there's different notation for each. Segment XY looks like this. And if I go too fast, I am recording this. I just want to make sure I finish the whole thing in the time given. So segment XY looks like that. When you name it, you just put a segment bar over it. Rays have an initial point and then they shoot off. It doesn't matter in which direction. So I'm going to call this a Y and an X. Sawyer, do you think that's called ray XY or ray YX? YX. Yep, this guy right here, you might want to point at it. So if they say an initial point with a ray with initial point Y, that's what that's called. So let's point at that and write initial. Am I going at a decent pace, Bentley? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not going too slow or too fast, but this would be called ray YX. You name it with its initial point, okay? Lines go forever in both directions between your 2 points. And make those lines bigger, and we put the line symbol over it. Some people goof up segments and lines. Just think segments stop. They both have that letter S. Maybe you highlight that letter S so you know that segments stop. Maybe you highlight those. You're using a highlighter. If I want the length of XY, it's how long it is. I don't put any bar over it. Maybe you want to write in parentheses no bar or something, but you need to have those down. All right, so we've got our segments, our rays, and our lines, and our lengths. You might want to highlight all of those. Next up is opposite rays. So if you're asked about opposite rays, okay, I'd highlight that so it stands out to you. I'm going to go back and grab my yellow. For some reason, I'm on my blue. But I'd highlight that word. So if it says name a ray opposite of, you'll know what opposite rays do. Make this point a little bigger. Opposite rays get named with that one first. So if I were to call this CHA for Chase's first letters, the opposite rays would be called HA and H what? C. Yeah, let's write that down. But this has to be listed first. So I'm going to write first. So our opposite, if it asks you on your test, if there's a whole big picture and it says, what ray is opposite of BA? You have to choose B and shoot in the opposite direction. So my opposite rays would be, let's put it right here, HA, with the ray symbol over it, and HC. You might want to highlight those so you know they have to have that same shout out point. Those are called opposite rays. I'm going to put a big star in here because this means watch out. Put a star here. There's 2 types of problems with segments. One where you're given a piece. I'm going to call this piece 1. I'm going to call it P1 for piece 1, so I don't have to write out the word. And then another piece. Maybe the first piece is x plus 4 and the second piece is 9x plus 2. What do the 2 pieces have to add up to? The whole way. All right, if you're given 2 pieces that aren't the same length, they add up to the whole way. Let's call that W. And we can't do an example in full. So I want you to write this. If you're given this, if they say from A to B is 4x minus 2, and from B to C is 9x plus 1, and for A to C is 4x minus 9, you're just going to say the piece plus the piece equals the whole way across. And we can't do an example, so I can't throw that in there. But then you solve for x and you work with it. Sometimes, though, I want you to highlight this. There's one or two where they're going to tell you that right there is a midpoint. And I'm going to have you highlight that word so it should, highlight that word so that it stands out to you. Okay? If they tell you that that point is a midpoint, you still have piece 1 and piece 2, but they don't need to tell you the whole way across. That's not one where you add them up. It's one where you do what? That's in the middle. What do you do with your two pieces? Set them equal. Yeah, so that's right. Set equal. This whole chapter, so you're going to say P1 equals piece 2. Okay? And solve. Any questions on that? Because that's a really big one. Kids will goof the two up. So if they don't say midpoint, add up to the whole way across. If they say it's a midpoint, set them equal. Is that enough on your note card for that concept? Because I can't give you an example. Next up, you need to know 3 or 4 ways to name an angle. It's all about the vertex. You might want to highlight that. If I ask you to name this 3 ways, you can call it angle Y. Do you know why? There's only one of them there. What else can you call it? Angle X, Y, Z, but make sure that that goes in the middle. You might want to highlight. You might want to highlight this angle symbol because we'll take off if you don't include that angle symbol. So angle Y, angle X, Y, Z, angle Z, Y, X. Make sure you have the angle sign. Make sure you have the vertex in the middle. And if there's a number in there, I just threw a 2 in there, by the way, if you didn't see that. We could also call it angle 2. So when you're naming the angle, vertex in the middle and the angle sign. Okay? When you're asked to classify, highlight this word because most people know that this is acute, obtuse, and right, but they don't know that's what they're supposed to write when it says to classify it. So take that word classify and put it in quotes so that if it says to find the measure and classify, they're asking you for 42 degrees acute. And if you only put 42 degrees, you're going to get a point up. Does that make sense? So classify requires the words acute. Oops, I meant to highlight that. Acute, obtuse, right. And what's this last one called? Straight. Yes. And when do you write those words? When it says classify. So you might have it laid out on a protractor and it might say find the measure of angle QWP, and Bentley will write 127 degrees. But then it's also going to say classify, so he's going to write comma obtuse. So make sure you know that when it says classify, that's what you're supposed to do. Now we have different types of angle pairs. One type is supplementary. You're going to have to write that a little bit smaller. Supplementary. Supplementary angles do one thing and one thing only. What do they add up to? 180. They can be separate, like this 140 and this 40. These are called supplementary angles. So if it said on your test, what angle pair relationship is this? You're going to say supplementary because they add to 180 degrees. Complementary. If it says angle A is x plus 4 and angle B is 2x plus 7 and they're complementary, what are you going to add them up to equal? 90. Yep, so every single algebra problem in this chapter, I'd say 7 out of 10 times they add up to something. The other 3 out of 10, they're equal to each other. Okay, so we have supplementary add up to 180. So if you see like this, don't draw it, but if it says, what kind of angles are these? Then you're going to go, well, I don't know, but you're going to go, oh, 160 and 20, that's 180. What are you going to write? Supplementary. If they were 47 and 43, you'll write complementary. Sometimes when we have this X like this, those are called vertical angles. Remember I told you to look for that X? These are called vertical angles. What does it mean when I put one arc here and one arc here? They're the same. The ones across from each other are the same. So let's put some numbers in there. If this is 70 degrees, what's the one across from it? 70. Maybe they ask you, though, for the one next door or adjacent to it. If this is 70 and that's 70, what do you think this one is, since it makes a line with the 70ers? 110, right? Because a straight angle or a line, you might want to write that over here, see what I'm writing, is 180 degrees. So if two angles make a line together, you're right, this is 110. What's the one across from it going to be then? 110. Yeah, so when you see that X, it's same, but the ones next door have to add up to 180. Okay, so write this symbol, vertical are congruent. That's what that symbol means, we know that. Notice I don't have any examples up here, I'm not solving any algebra, but over here, let's highlight the word vertical, by the way. We have adjacent angles. Actually, I'm going to call this a linear pair because that's more specific. So if you started writing it, linear pair. Highlight that word line. There's two angles that make a line together. If that happens, do the two angles add up to something or are they equal to each other? What do you think, Libby? They add up to something. What do they add up to? Yeah, so if Lily's taking her test and number 14 says angle ABC and angle QBC form a linear pair. She's going to go, oh, linear pair. They add to 180. Maybe one of them's 4x minus 7 and the other one's 3x plus 2. It doesn't matter. If they're a linear pair, what do they add up to? Yeah, and go ahead and write solve, because with the, solve for x. And I'm going to go dot, 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 because sometimes they don't ask for x. They'll ask for a specific angle. Right, Lily? So you have to plug it back in. You have to read the question very carefully. All right.
What's the difference between supplementary and a linear pair?
The supplementary don't have to make a line together. Every linear pair is supplementary, but not every supplementary pair is linear. They can be split apart. This is supplementary, but not linear. This is supplementary and linear. Gotcha. Excellent question. All right. So now we have two ways angles get split. So up here, we had two ways to split the line. When they're not equal, so let's go write this here. Let's write maybe W and then a P. And I'm just randomly picking letters, so there's no way on your test they're going to be the same letters. But you can guarantee there'll be a picture like this where there's a big angle that got split into two. What do the two angles have to add up to? The whole thing. So let's write that out, what that means, just to practice writing angles. The measure of angle, the top one. How would I name the top one up here? WPR, thank you guys. Of WPR, maybe that's numbers. Maybe it's just like 62. I'm trying to make an R here, guys, but there's one little stripe on my board. There we go. Plus measure of angle. What would the bottom one be? SPR or RPS. It doesn't matter. You just have to watch it. RPS has to equal the whole way across. What do you think we're going to call the whole way across? W what? PS. Yes. Measure angle WPS. In short, though, what that's notation for is the piece 1, angle 1, plus the piece 2. Actually, let's call them angle 1. That'd be better. Let's go put a little 1 in here. 1, 2. Angle 1 plus angle 2 has to equal the whole way. So the moral of that story is if you're given two pieces, add them up to the whole way. Then you solve for x, and I go dot, 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 because you don't know. If they ask for x, you're done. Any questions about that? Sometimes, I'm going to do, don't write this because you can't do examples. Sometimes there'll just be numbers here. Like it might say the whole way is 100, and this top piece is 40, and they'll ask you for angle 2, and you go, oh, 60, right? But sometimes it's the algebra that you set up, so watch out for that. What do you think you're going to do if it says angle, let's do this, angle A, B, C. So let's do angle A, B, C is bisected. Go ahead and highlight that word bisect. You might see that twice on your test on Friday. Ray, B, D. What does that mean if you see that on your test? Cut it in half. Yep, it means it cuts it into two equal pieces. So if Stephanie's taking her test and it says Ray PQ bisects angle, she's going to go, oh, I cut it in half. So let's go right, cut into two equal pieces, cut into two equal angles. So guess what you're going to do with the angles? Do they add up to something, or are you going to set them equal? What do you think? Yeah, so let's draw an arrow. So if it says bisected, you're going to set the angles equal. How would you write that? You could say the measure of angle A, B, D, the top one, has to be equal to the measure of angle D, B, C, or just write yourself a little note, set equal. I'm going to highlight that so that if Stephanie's on her test and she's got an angle that's bisected, she's going to go, oh, I need to set those pieces equal. All right, next is from the last couple days. The midpoint. You might have it memorized now, but the test isn't for 3 more days. So when you're finding a midpoint, remember you add those x's and divide by what? 2, yep. And then you add those y's and you divide by 2. Let's highlight that word midpoint so it stands out for you. If you're asked to find the midpoint, I'm going to actually highlight the word find. So if it says find the midpoint of. But do you remember from today in our formative, what if you know the midpoint? You don't use this formula. That's where I stacked them. Remember? Can I write the word stack? I did one over the other. Let's just stack them. Let's go like this. If you know one of the endpoints is 1, 5, say that's A, and you know the middle is, say, -3, 2. I can't do this problem, but do you remember what we did? I called it stack them and then walk and keep on walking. Do you guys need me to explain that at all? Like to get from 5 to 2, I go back 3, so I go back 3 more. So let's write stack and walk. Stack and walk. That's one of the most missed questions because most kids will find the midpoint of those. If you know the midpoint, stack them and walk. Distance formula. Square root of. You subtract the x's, the first coordinates of each point, square, subtract the y's, square. And it's all under a root. So let's highlight distance. We're almost done. From today, make sure I gave you enough time. Those are big. Make sure you get those formulas on there. All right, perimeter, add sides. Area of a rectangle, base times height. I definitely want to get the circumference on there, so let's get that on. I'm going kind of fast, but I think the bell's going to ring in 2 minutes, so I want to get them up there. 2 times pi times r. Let's put dots in so you know you're multiplying. Area was 2 pi times the radius squared. Add all the sides. They're different all the time. So pi times r squared. In terms of pi, let's write that down there. If you see the words in terms of pi, what's going to be in your answer? Pi. So how about if we just go like that? All right, if it says in terms of pi, do not enter pi on your calculator. One last thing, conversions. Are you ready? How many inches are in a foot? In case you need to convert. 12, right? How many feet are in a yard? Do we remember that? Just in case you need to convert yards into feet. 3. Yep, 3 feet are in 1 yard. So make sure you know those. And again, if you're missing a little bit here at the end, watch the end of the video. Watch your markings. So let's go like this. And let's call this W, X, Y, Z. If I go like that and like that, what am I telling you about angle XWZ and XYZ? They're the same. Okay, so let's go angle XWZ is congruent to angle XYZ. That's what those markings mean. If I go like this, what am I telling you? Did you see what I just did? You might have been writing. I put a dash here and a dash here. What am I telling you? Those are the same length. So you know X, Y is congruent to XZ. So just know your markings because it might not have any numbers and it might ask you what angle is the same as angle XYZ. And you're going to go, oh, single arc, they're the same. I think we got everything, guys. So tomorrow in class, the second half is going to be for them to work on their note cards. You'll be done. You're going to use your note card to do your practice test, and if there's something missing, you can add to it. You just can't go to the back, and you can't do examples. Okay, so if you're like taking the practice test, and you're like, ooh, I should put that on there, go ahead. All right, awesome.
Wait, so are we not allowed to write like extra little notes?
You can write any extra little notes. You can't do any examples. So you'll notice I don't have any like finding X or any algebra. But if there's any vocabulary